Hey everybody, it's Lynn. I had a request for a tutorial on how to make the little fabric prayer journals that I make. So I'm going to show you how I do that. I also wanted to show you my new baby over here. I recently got rid of my 30-year-old baby lock sewing machine. It was a wonderful workhorse for 30 years. It made baby clothes for me. It altered so many dresses. You see things over there I'm working on. It made journals, it made curtains, but it's to the point where it would take more money to fix it, clean it, put it back in new working order than it would to go out and buy a new one. So I bought a computerized Brother. I love it. It's an inexpensive but very good model with really high ratings. So now, enough about that. Let's just quickly look through this. It's got the button closure with the tie, the beautiful hand-painted angel. The tapestry fabric that I used is this really pretty lavender stripe. There are the typical cards from Tsunami Rose and the Bible cards that I love. Beautiful fabric here. I like to mix up the fabric while keeping it, you know, complementary and a little contrasting just for interest, unless you're doing one that's just completely one color, like a really soft one. Sometimes I like to do the like all white sort of shabby theme or shabby style, and it's got the charms in the center, silver plated cross, and the pretty bead. So let's just go ahead and get into the tutorial. Okay, the first thing I do when I'm going to make a prayer journal or a little fabric journal is pick a color theme. This one, I have a beautiful piece of heavy striped fabric. I don't use a ton of stripes. Sorry for the little pieces of lint on this. But I love the purple, and there's going to be enough fabric on top of this to really tone the stripes down. So I pick my fabric, that kind of a theme, a color. The second thing I do is pick the alternating fabrics if I'm using like two different fabrics as far as color or style. I have this huge bin of light colored fabrics, and they smell so good. They've had some really nice potpourri pieces in the box. It's some really nice stuff from Tuesday morning, so it's not too strong. It just smells so good. Anyway, I'm going to use this lavender and some really light, soft, white, shabby pieces. My prayer journals or fabric books are 4 pieces of fabric, and they're laid on top of each other and folded, so you end up with basically 8 pages. They're all fabric pages. Every page from the very first inside cover has a pocket, and that is to hold the little Bible verse cards. I cut my fabric to be about 5 inches tall, and each piece is about 8 inches wide. So when you fold it, it makes a book that's about 4 by 5 inches. Honestly, something I try to do when I'm cutting the fabric is to make the very outside layer just a tiny bit bigger. Fabric is thicker than paper. So when you fold the pages, you want that outer page to have a little bit more length so that it doesn't all of a sudden get shorter than the inside pages. So the very outer page I do probably at 8 3/4 or even sometimes 9 inches, and then I kind of taper back a little bit. But the goal is to have the book be about 4 inches wide and 5 inches tall. So we're going to cut some fabric. Let me tell you, these journals are so easy to make. I feel like even if you had one in front of you, that you could easily figure out how they're made. They're just very simple, but they're very sweet, and I love the idea. So anyway, okay, let's put this down, and Let me make sure my fabric is where I need it to be. Honestly, I like for these journals to be a little bit primitive feeling. In other words, I want it to feel old, like something that would have been made a long time ago. Maybe by a mother in days of old for her children, something quiet like a church book or a keepsake to pass along to her children with Bible verses or something like that. So I don't fret if it's a millimeter or 2 millimeters off in little spots. So we've got 5 inches tall. This very outer layer, like I said, I'm going to make it a little bit wider than 8 inches. I'm going to cut it at 9. So there's that piece. I'm going to cut another piece. This will be the base of the second page. I'm going to cut it a little bit shorter than 9. So we have that second one. So let's do, again, 5 inches tall. And let's do make these closer to 8 inches exactly. So we have this outer layer, we have the second page, we have the third page, and the fourth page. So when we close it, they're pretty even. And again, even if they're a little bit off, I'm not going to fret because I want this to have a really primitive sort of look. What I normally do is double each page. It just gives it more interest. It makes the pages a little bit thicker and softer. So I'm going to get some of my fabric that we're going to use to contrast this or to complement it. This is a nice heavy piece. I may use this for, yeah, we'll use a piece of this. I'm just going to cut that edge off. I don't really want that stitching on the edge. So let's use this on the inside of the front piece, which means we're going to cut it at 9 inches. And then I know I should be using my ruler. So let's go back to this very front piece. That is going to be the first page. That's going to be pretty. So there's the first page. And then the second page. I think for the second page, I'm going to use this yellow. It's got the kind of purple streak in it. And it's a really soft fabric. It's contrasting. There may not seem to be much rhyme or reason to this right now, but they're so pretty when they come together. So that's going to be our second page. Let's just even that up a little bit. For the next page, I've got some really pretty linen that I want to use, and I'm just going to cut around this piece because this linen is from a shirt that has a lot of you know, hems and seams and tucks, and it's not so easy to lay out flat, but there is. That's going to be the third page. For the fourth page, I want more linen. I want something really pretty. That is so pretty. That might be better for a pocket though, like to go on the top. Let's use some of this, and we will just cut right around this one as well. Now we're going to try out this new sewing machine. All right, so I might as well just start from the inside, but first let's take a look at the pages that we have. Let me make sure you can see the sewing machine. I'm going to stitch each page together by doing a zigzag stitch all around the edge. Oh, I love it. This machine is so awesome. The next step, once we get these 4 pages done, is going to be putting the pockets in. But you can see there's just the zigzag stitch all around. There's going to be a little bit of unraveling. That was, you know, one of my intentions for this little journal. Okay, now we have our 4 pages, front and back. There's the first one, the second one, the third one, and the fourth one. I want to decorate this one, the cover, and I love to do my angel stamps. I've cut out a really pretty piece of fabric. This was the corner of a table scarf, and I'm actually going to just round this edge a little bit. I want that to be on the front, so that's going to go there, but I'm also going to use my angel stamp with some acrylic paint to put an image on the front of that. This is really, really easy, and acrylic paint dries so quickly. I want to stick with purple. Come out. So let's put some purple ink or acrylic paint, and then let's just spread it out evenly. One of the effects that I really love in working with this and making these stamps, I like the mixture of distress ink and paint. So I'm going to put some ink on this, then I'm going to get plenty of acrylic paint on it. If you don't get enough dipping it in, just turn it over and brush the paint right onto the stamp. And then press down. There's your angel. You see that? Okay, I went and washed my stamp off immediately, because you don't want to mess up your good stamps with acrylic paint. If you let it dry on there, it is not a good thing. That's going to be really pretty. We're going to let this dry a little bit more before we sew it, and in the meantime, we're going to put that aside because we know that's our front page. Let's start on the second page and figure out what we want for pockets. That would be pretty. You know what? Just pick pieces that you like. Pick what you like. Pick colors that work together. Pick what makes you happy. We're going to do one on each side. So I cut out a pocket for one side. Let's cut a pocket for the other side. I'm really kind of a lazy seamstress, I guess. I like instant gratification, which is one reason I could never use patterns for making clothes. I just like to do what I like to do and be done with it. So we're going to put that on one side and this on the other side. That's going to be so pretty. So to put the pocket on, we're going to sew down the side, across the bottom, and back up here. When we bind the pages together, that's going to attach the pocket in the middle. I'm going to get a couple of pins to pin this into place because I'm going to try to be a good example. When I'm sewing, I don't use pins for things like this if it's really small. I probably should. I've made plenty of mistakes. I'm not saying that I don't need any help. I'm just saying that I normally don't pin things that are this small. I'll probably be glad I used these. I'll think, oh, why don't I use these all the time? I'm going to leave it on zigzag stitch for this. I'm going to go backwards. straight across the bottom and up the side. Everything's in place. Gonna go up and then come back and go up a little bit to make sure it doesn't come loose. That's the second page. Let's go ahead and pick pockets for the third page. So here's something else to think about, is not having too much of the same fabric on the same page. This is going to be our front page, and we're going to have white right here. So the second page is going to be this right here and this here. So it would be really pretty to make a pocket from this so that it's contrasting. I mean, it's opposite. It's on the bottom. So I'm going to cut a piece that's 9 inches long and about 2.5 inches tall. And that's going to be the pocket for the inside cover. And I'm not going to sew it into place yet because we want to sew this on the front first. Once we sew this pocket into place, we don't want to be sewing something on the other side. I think this needs a little more drying time because of that big spot. And this should show you, this is not a measure of perfection. This is something that's meant to feel and look kind of primitive. So we know that we're going to use that, but let's let that angel dry a little bit more. Our second page is done, and let's go ahead and pick pockets for our third page. So we know how those pages are going to go. This can be here, which means we could also do a striped pocket right here. So let's cut another strip. This one was a little shorter. Let's just measure exactly how long we need for this side. I usually make them a little bit longer rather than shorter. It's better to have enough space and then have to trim a little bit of pocket off than to cut it too short, especially if you don't have a lot of a fabric that you're working with. Cut it about 2.5 inches, and I should be using my ruler. So we've got a pocket for this side, which means we definitely want to use something different on this side. And I think probably the white would be pretty because it's going to be alternating with that white there. Is that going to be wide enough? Yeah, look, that's really actually the perfect length. So we just need to cut this piece. It's already the right length. It's a little over 8 inches. So we just need to cut it tall enough. And I'm going to make this a little over 2.5 inches because it's got the trim on it. So let's think. If I got that's done, that's going to go there. Yeah, so I will go ahead and sew the pockets onto this page. So our third page is done. We're still, and you can see how thick this is getting and how the inside pages are starting to protrude. That is definitely one reason you want this outer page to be just a little bit longer. When we fold this, it's going to be right at 4 inches, a little bit over, but I think you definitely see what I'm talking about there. So this inside page, let's put the white here. Instead of having another, I'm getting kind of, I don't want to just overwhelm the journal with those lavender stripes. You know what? This is another soft piece that is not too terribly far off from this fabric. So I think I'm going to use this to make a pocket. Let's cut a piece that's about a little over 8 inches long. Like I said, it's better to have to trim it than to be too short. And let's do about 2.5 inches tall. So that's going to be the pocket on this side. And what do we want on the very inside? Something really pretty. Do we want more of this? I think it would be pretty in there. So let's do that. Let's do a piece on the inside that's about 2.5 inches. And this is a wonderful, wonderful way to use up fabric scraps. I'm going to go ahead and sew these pockets on the inside page. Now I'm going to trim just a little bit off the edge. You can see where the pockets were a little bit longer. Now we have our inside page. We have the third page. We have the second page. We need to put this on the front. I don't want to use a zigzag stitch for the front. I think I'm going to use a straight stitch to attach it so that I can then do some little decorative like circles. So here you can see I used a straight stitch. I went all around the edge and then I just went around and around, and it gives a beautiful quilted look. So the next thing we want to do before putting that pocket on the inside is to sew something across that's going to be our closure. I love something like this. It's really, really thin. It doesn't break when you pull on it. It's easy to sew, and I want it to start right here. We're going to measure enough to go across, and then we want enough left over to wrap around a button and hang down a little bit. So probably about that much. Okay, see? It's attached. Isn't that pretty? This is going to come right around and go around the button. So we have the front page, we have the second page, the third page, the inside page. Let's put our pocket on now. Something else that we're going to do at the very last is to put a button right here, but we're not going to do it yet. We're going to do that last because we want to be able to sew this pocket on, and you can't really sew here with a machine if there's a button here on the outside. So I'm going to put this under the machine and zigzag right around the side, across the bottom, and up here, just like the other pockets. On the inside pocket, I zigzagged across the top of this piece of fabric just because this fabric unravels pretty easily. You can do that on every piece if you choose to. Sometimes I do and sometimes I don't. I love it when I get to this part because I know that I'm very close to being done. And I just love to see these little prayer journals come together. They're so sweet. I love these. And I just remember the night that this idea came to me. I had been really down about something that happened with one of my journals, and I had come across these really beautiful little prayer cards, and I decided to just create something new for the shop. And you know, I know there are other prayer journals out there, but I had not seen anything else like this. And I enjoyed making it, so I'm happy to share this tutorial. These make great gifts. This would be a wonderful item to make if you do like craft shows, and you can do so many themes. And these would make good little church books. I always had things for my children to be quiet, something that they could hold and not make a lot of noise. You could do books with dinosaur cards. There are just so many things you could do with these. There's one more thing I want to tell you that you can do if you decide to. Sometimes I do this and sometimes I don't. You can take little pieces of the fabric that you've already used, and you can cut tabs, and you can just fold them over the ends and make little tabs to turn the pages with. So I will probably add a few of these. I don't know if I want this dark stripe. Just wanted to show you. Oh look, it is so pretty. So I haven't bound the pages yet, but every page is 2 layers of fabric with a pocket on each side. It's a simple process, and it's something that is so rewarding and so pretty. I put tabs on just a couple of the pages, mainly because I didn't want to stitch over both of these pretty edges from that little table scarf. So now I'm going to show you how to bind it. We are getting to the very end of this sweet little journal. I'm going to use this neutral, it's almost got a mauve feel to it. It's not. It's in the brown or tan family. I don't have any lavender embroidery thread right now. And this color is going to be fine. So we're going to thread this large needle. And I usually take 1, 2, 3, maybe 3 lengths. Very generous. Maybe a little more, because I do a lot of stitching with this. And I'm going to make sure one more time that my pages are in the order I want them in and that they're all right side up. I've trimmed off most of the loose edges. This gives me a chance to go through one more time though and clip some of the longer strings. I'm going to make sure this is just the way we want it. I line the pages up. Then I take 2 heavy clips and I clip each end to kind of keep it in place. You still want to hold on to it and, you know, gauge the center. And already I see that top piece needs to slide down a tiny bit. Not too much. There, that's better. I've got the needle threaded. I'm going to go in right in the center, and it's not an exact science. You want to get as close to the center as you can. I start on the inside, and I usually do start right at the top of that pocket so that you catch it on the first pass through. And is that the center? It looks to me like it needs to take the clips out for just a second. And you don't have to have the clips. Sometimes I use them. Sometimes you have to readjust them because once you fold it together, all that bulk makes it feel like the pages are not lined up anymore. That's going to be okay. So it looks like it's coming through in the center okay. So I'm going to push it on through and pull it about like that. Now let's go back down. I go down probably like not quite an inch. Push it through every layer, and then again I come back, I look on the inside to make sure that it's going to come up through and line up for the most part. This is probably one of the most tedious parts, but don't fret, don't worry too much about it. Again, we want sort of a primitive look. I'm going to pull a little more thread to the bottom, because we're going to stitch all the way down and then back up to the top. You'll see as we keep going. So let's go down about another inch to 3/4 of an inch and make sure it's lined up. And the last one, we're going to come down here, still in the center, and we're going to push it through every layer. Now it's going to start getting easier because we're going to come back up. We're going to push through right below where that stitch is, where we left off before. And let's make sure I don't want to catch that little leaf. I'm going to pull that back. And sometimes you have to watch the outside too, that it's coming up where it's supposed to. And this will get easier and easier. Now let's go kind of hard to see because of the fabric, but this is where the stitch, the earlier stitch ended. I'm going to go down right below it. Oh, and look, if you have to manipulate the layers a little bit to get it to line up, you know, do what you need to. So you can see how it's making a straight line and there aren't any huge gaps. So I'm going to come back up right underneath where we went in, that very first spot. And I'm going to come up here. Now we're going to start going up to the top. We're going to sew. Let's push this through. Let's maybe go up a little bit higher. And let's stop for just a minute and make sure that everything looks like it's lined up. Let's come right here and go up about another inch. See, it's getting quicker. Once you get through those first few steps or stitches, I'm going to come up about an inch, push the needle through, turn it over and make sure it's in the center. And then I'm going to do the same as before. I'm going to come to the very top of where this stitch was. Might be hard to see because of the thread. I should have used a thread that really stood out. I apologize for that. So we're going to come out here, and then we're going to sew back in at the top of that last stitch. So when you push this through, both strings are going to be on the inside right in the center. And we're just going to tie them. And I tie a knot like this and kind of hold the strings tight. I put one finger in the center to hold it down, and then I loop that through once and loop it through again. And then I pull tight with my fingers still right there in the center. And there. Now you can put your charms on these little strings, and when you close it, you've got a pretty little fabric prayer journal. Now we have to put the button on. I have this beautiful, pretty lavender button with the little like crystals in the front. Kind of looks like an old button. I found this at the scrap exchange. I think that would be really pretty. I'm going to take some more of this heavy embroidery thread. I'm going to thread the needle again. I want the button about right here. So I'm just going to push this through, and I'm going to make sure I don't catch my pocket. If your pocket comes up higher, then just push the pocket back a little bit. It's really easy to do. Leave enough thread hanging out on the inside so that you can knot the thread. So I'm going to go back through. This is a really big needle, but I like that. That's kind of what you need. Let's push it through again. When we pull that thread tight, it pulls the button right down snug, but you can still run the needle through the little shank or whatever that's called, and then pull it through. I'm going to go through one more time. Oops, we don't want to go through the center of the button. We want to come up beside it. And now let's tie this. And then we're just going to cut. I tied 2 knots and I looped that second one around twice. You can tuck those strings under the pocket if you want to. You don't have to. Now, guess what we have to do last of all? The last thing to do is to go through and put in our little Bible verse cards. 14. 1, 2, 12, 13, 14. I love these cards. So let's put in our little Bible verse cards. And I'll put this in the back. I love this part. Look, if life hands you lemons, make lemonade. Let's put, and sometimes I like to pick one that's got a pretty little image. Sometimes I can find one that's more, well, that's good. It's perfect. Well, I love the little bird. Let's put one of those in the front. So that's what I was looking for. So let's go back over here and put these in. This one and this one. And not quite done. We're getting there. So let's get our charms out. I have these little silver plated crosses that came from Rare Earth Beads. And let's just tie this one. We want it to hang down out of the book a little bit. Let's do 2 or 3 knots at the top of that. So that little charm is in, and let's do a bead charm on that one. I think that blue would be pretty. That would be pretty. You need a bead that has a big enough hole that this embroidery thread will fit through. Ooh, that blue one is really pretty. And you keep knotting it. If you hold your finger where the first knot is, it's pretty easy to line the second knot up as you pull it. You kind of guide it where you want it to be. I used to hate not being able to do that when I was little, like 5 years old, when my mom was showing me how to sew, and I was totally in her sight. And it was one piece of thread that she was showing me how to just do a really simple stitch. And I just remembered wanting to make knots like she did, where it ended up all in one spot. And my knots would be all up and down the thread. And I think I finally figured it out. If you make a big enough knot, it's not going to pull through. One more thing yet, but let's see if that works okay. And it does. That's pretty. The final step here is the last, I'm putting another layer of cards throughout. These are more of Tsunami Rose, beautiful cards. And again, I purchased these from her shop and purchased the extended license, and I love being able to use these. When a shop offers something like that, it's, I don't know, it really helps other shop owners. For some reason, I think this linen is just wanting to catch the corners of these cards. Something else you can do is just gently round the edges of cards like this, and they slide in a lot easier. I may go back and do that on all of these, but for now I wanted to just, and it's really catching on that linen. As you can imagine, it's a looser weave, so it allows the corner of this card just to tuck right in between the threads. You can see what a difference that makes. So let's put these in. Love these. And that is just perfect. So it's done. That's our beautiful prayer journal that we made. I love it. And I'm so happy to be able to share the way they're made.